Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Community and Infrastructure Services meeting for May 13th. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we'll move on to consent items. Please note it was identified that a special event is planned prior to the May 27, 2024 Council meeting, and it was noted due to that event, any recommendation arising from this matter would be forwarded to Special Counsel later today. Does anyone have any questions with regards to the consent items? Seeing none, do I have a mover, please? Thank you, Councillor Obadani. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, we will now move on to our delegations. To all the delegations, while public participation is welcomed at meetings, we are committed to engaging in respectful and constructive dialogue with members of the community, and conducting yourself in any of the following manners may result in an immediate removal from the meeting: interrupting councillors, staff, or other delegations, derogatory statements about councillors, staff, or others, and hate speech or defamatory comments. One last reminder for delegations: please do not take offense if following your presentation there are no questions from council. This is council's time to really listen and reflect upon the opinions and ideas shared with us from our community members. And we'll move on to our discussion items then. And we have a Vision Zero project update, and I believe that Mr. McCrimmon-Jones has a 5-minute presentation for us. Maybe we can raise the podium some for him. And whenever you're ready, thank you.
Chamber, my name is Aaron McCrimmon-Jones, Manager, Transportation Safety and Policy, and I am joined today by my colleague, Barry Cronkite, Director, Transportation Services. To start off, the Vision Zero agenda item, we would like to present to Council 2 videos that we are planning to release this week as part of our 2024 Vision Zero media and educational campaign. These new videos build on the 2 videos that were released as part of a very successful 2023 educational campaign, which were also developed with our Vision Zero partners. I'd ask clerks if they could please cue the videos.
Speeding doesn't get you there much faster. Drive responsibly and help us make this a safer community with 0 traffic fatalities and injuries.
Does this road sign look familiar? It shows a pedestrian crossover, a place where pedestrians have the right of way to cross the road. Watch for this sign and these striped marks on the road. They can often be found at trail crossings and roundabouts. When you drive or ride up to a crossover, you must reduce your speed and look for pedestrians. If there are pedestrians on the crosswalk or waiting to cross, you must stop. It's the law. Pedestrians have the right of way at all times, whether there are flashing lights or not. Make sure you wait until they have fully crossed the road before proceeding. If you're a pedestrian at a crossover and there is a push button, use it to turn on the flashing lights. Make sure it is safe before crossing. If you're a cyclist, please dismount from your bike and cross as a pedestrian. Let's all work together for everyone's safety.
Thank you. So the first video is an extension of our 2023 campaign focusing on driver behaviors and the concept that all collisions have a cause which can be prevented. The video attempts to depict aggressive driving behaviors while making it clear that these high-risk behaviors make very little sense. The second video expands on our PXO educational campaign, also launched in 2023. PXO is the acronym for pedestrian crossover, which are traffic controls where pedestrians have the right-of-way. PXOs are a relatively new type of traffic control that were introduced in Ontario in 2014, but they're quickly becoming more prevalent, and educating both drivers and pedestrians on the use of PXOs will continue to be a focus of Vision Zero. Because so much of Vision Zero's success hangs on collaboration, we feel it's important just to highlight some of our most important Vision Zero partnerships. Waterloo Region Police Service, who lead our Selective Traffic Enforcement Program, or what we call STEP. Waterloo Region School Travel Planning, who are educating our young people on staying safe and promoting active transportation to school. The City of Waterloo and the Region of Waterloo, who we partner with on a range of safety initiatives, including the educational videos that you just saw, the Neighborhood Speed Limit Project, and automated speed enforcement. Waterloo Region Public Health, who are working with to provide us with new types of data to better understand the impacts of traffic collisions. And also our internal partners, Parks and Cemeteries, who we've developed strategic partnerships with to deliver Vision Zero hotspots and education. The engineering division, including both design and construction teams, who are helping us implement dozens of hotspots and Vision Zero improvements annually. Corporate communications, who help us educate and raise awareness. The communications achieved a very impressive 6 million impressions on our educational videos in 2023 using a multitude of media platforms. Our roads and traffic team, who are constantly adapting and learning to maintain new types of street design and infrastructure and installing new safety features for us every year. Emergency services, who we collaborate with to find the balance between risk reduction measures and emergency response times. And finally, Kitchener City Council, who we collaborate with regularly on Vision Zero initiatives. So all of these partners have played a key role in developing the 2024 action items, which are summarized in the report before you, including Attachment A, 2024 Vision Zero safety improvements, which summarizes over 40 street safety action items for 2024, all of which will have a direct impact on preventing traffic-related fatalities and injuries. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCrimmon-Jones. Council, do you have questions? Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. We will move to delegations now. I apologize. Got ahead of myself. Excited to ask questions. Next, we'll have Mr. York Braschak, please, for our PowerPoint presentation. Welcome.
Yeah, through the chair, good afternoon. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Jörg Braschak. I'm a Ward 10 resident, and I would like to speak in support of the Vision Zero strategy, which I think is a very important policy tool here. However, I would also speak a little bit in support or to suggest some changes that I think would be necessary to consider to make it a little bit more robust. Just to illustrate where I'm coming from, these are two pictures of incidents that are nowhere captured in our data. The first bigger picture was taken by my wife on the way back from school drop-off in January 2023. It's on Margaret Avenue, and as you can see, a driver apparently lost control of the car and just took down this no parking sign where just 10 minutes earlier there were kids on the way to school. This is outside a school zone. The other picture is just right in front of our house. We live on Waterloo Street. There are many children, small children, trying to learn how to bike. And this data that I'm having here is the latest from City of Kitchener traffic studies. It's getting close to the 85th percentile to 50 kilometers per hour, which I think is evidently not safe. And next slide, please. To summarize the problem, how I see it.
Mr. Broschek?
Oh,
You
yep.
can actually, I think you've got the...
Sorry.
yeah,
Sorry.
no,
Thank you.
No, that's okay. Thank you.
Very quickly, so Vision Zero is a process. And we often say, well, the goal is maybe already achieved, but I don't think so. The process is actually about making incrementally road safety better, improving it both objectively but also subjectively. And at the same time, we're coping with a challenge. In my opinion, the traffic road safety situation is getting worse rather than better. We have more vehicles, more larger vehicles, and what is also highlighted in the report, a general driving behavior that is not really safe. And I think this is a big challenge. We need to think about how we can address this in the long term. One element or one key tool that I would like to highlight here in particular is the speed limit of 30, which has become more or less the default across European municipalities, but also increasingly in Canada. Vancouver was the last city that just adopted it a couple of weeks ago. And I think there's a reason for this. Speed is the decisive factor that determines road safety, and evidently 30 is the speed limit where it becomes safe. So what we need to think about or prospectively is how can we get the driving behavior, the general pattern, closer to this safe threshold. And once you have this threshold achieved in the long term, there are many other benefits that are highlighted in the research literature that come out of this, direct and indirect benefits for public health, but also, and this is very important to me, if we think about speed limits and road safety as a tool for climate mitigation or climate policy, actually, there are real benefits that could be harnessed if we would be a little bit more robust here. One, I want to just highlight the point that is on the lower end of this slide. This is an outcome that just came out in recent studies, that if you have smoother traffic flows, you have more fuel efficiency and therefore lower greenhouse gas emissions, and also, of course, I think safer street, also perceived safer road conditions are really crucial to change the modal split more significantly. So in short, only bike lanes won't cut it. My final point to conclude, I'm a political scientist, and as a policy researcher, I'm aware that you're confronted with trade-offs, with policy trade-offs that are not always easy. The more I think about this is here, I don't see the big trade-off. You have a lot of potential benefits with this policy on the one hand, and the main argument that I've been hearing against a speed limit of 30 is it feels slow. And I think this is important maybe to reflect a little bit about. If we want to achieve a long-term cultivation and internalization of safer driving behavior, we need to think about carrots and sticks that can accomplish this in the long term. And I am aware, and then I stop, that it's not nice to have backlash, and we know that backlash is part of this, also in Europe. But it's important to keep in mind it's usually a comparatively small group within the larger population that is very loud. And once it is implemented and people can see the benefits, you really see that the support for these and other traffic calming measures are really increasing. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Broschek. We have some questions from Council. Go ahead. Councillor Michaud.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Majek, for sharing this presentation with us. So I'd like your thoughts on the 30 kilometers in school zones. And when you saw the presentation, you know, in 40 kilometers, people are going 47. So it's kind of, you know, conducive to 30, they're going 37. So I'd like your thoughts on that, and if we just had it in school zones and all the school zones.
Yeah, through the chair, thank you very much, Councillor Emilio, for this question. So I think since it's a process and we need to take steps, I'm very strongly in favor of a default speed limit, a static and statically enforced speed limit in school zones. However, the main point that I may not have made explicitly, but it's nice to have the opportunity to make this here, we need to think beyond school zones and community centers and libraries or whatever, because people and my kids need to get there. And we benefit a lot from the new cycling infrastructure, but it's only a very short piece actually of the entire 2 kilometers trip. that they have to cover to get to Sotheby Public School from Waterloo Street. So I think first we should really focus on that's okay to focus on the hotspots and vulnerable zones, but then we need to also think beyond that, and that's why I think the default of 30 is something to consider.
So one more question. The major artillery roads, I think they're called, now are, some are 60, some are 70. Homer Watson, it's a major road, that's 70. They're going 80 or 90 down there. So how do you see turning off of Homer Watson onto a 30-kilometer street? Like, I don't know, do you see that even a possibility? Thank you very much for this question as well. There's, of course, a default of 30 does not mean everywhere. It should be the default. So I'm doing trade policy actually as another part, and we're talking about the negative list approach. That means by default everything is covered, but then we define what is exempted. And I think wherever cyclists and pedestrians and cars mingle, 30 should be the default, unless there's a good physical separation there. Homer Watson, yeah, it's not, I get that, that's not realistic. But again, this is how you define it, and then you need to think about physical separation. And we have this there actually. But maybe if I can add one thing, if we think about approaching a roundabout, for example, or a critical intersection with 30 rather than 50, you have an entirely different perspective of what's going on around you. And I do this because I drive rather slow, get tailgated from time to time, but it's a different experience, especially we have a big car. And I notice exactly what this means. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Michaud. Councillor Obadani.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Really do appreciate it. Just interested in your thoughts around speed cameras as we see more and more of them popping up across the region. What are your thoughts on that?
Thank you very much through the chair. I think speed cameras and speed enforcement is absolutely crucial. I'm not a fan of policing, but when it comes to safety, I think the evidence is just, I have lots of studies, I'm happy to share if there's more interest. It helps. It is exactly what we need in addition to engineering, but we can't wait until all our streets are complete streets or re-engineered. So without enforcement, the effect of this is much more limited, and I want to just illustrate this with one example, Wales. They started introducing 30 as a default in January this year and had a staggered kind of policy, what they call engagement enforced, or engagement enforcing. That means if there's a first occurrence, police takes people out, talks to them, educates, if it's not a really significant excess of the speed limit. But then gradually the fines become more, they notice this. And this has led, if you compare Waterloo, which introduced 30 last year, I think, in some wards, compared to Wales, the success rate, the effectiveness of the policy is significantly higher. They have a very good compliance rate. So yes, and I notice we don't have the authority yet, but it would be something maybe to consider working on with partners, police, and maybe even the province to get this.
Were there reports of speed cameras being damaged, stolen, things of the like?
I'm not aware of this, but I would be happy, if you're interested, to share with you a first implementation report that has just been published from Wales, where they provide some data on compliance rate. It's also online available. I do not recall that there was anything about damage, but honestly, I would expect this would happening. I mean, we've seen this here. So it is, of course, something that we need to anticipate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Obadani. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for coming in. So, you know, when we set the speed limit around schools at 30 kilometers an hour, there's a lot of discussion as to whether it should just be during class time and maybe a couple hours before, a couple hours after. What are your views on that? Should it be 24/7, or should there be modifications to the time?
Yeah, through the chair, thank you very much for this question. I followed closely this December debate that here on council, and I was very much in support of the staff recommendation. I see that it's not nice to deal with angry email writers, residents, but I think the arguments are pretty clear. First, there's the consistency argument. When we know it's always 30 we can adjust our driving behavior accordingly. Then there's the other issue that I see, especially from our school, Sotheby Public School. We have events year-round. Councillor Stretch is also close there. Children are playing there on Saturday afternoons, also on holidays, Canada Day, if it's nice weather. There's a playground, there's a Gaga pit, there's a baseball diamond. So, and especially I would say children also from low-income households in particular, because this is the space that they have. So they cross Frederick, which is a regional road, I know. It is not really safe there, and therefore I would strongly recommend to just have it static.
Yeah. Okay. In addition, I wanted to, the Vision Zero approach includes, the setting of the speed limits, but also the other traffic calming measures. Do you have any suggestions on how we control driver behavior? Like that's a big thing, right?
I know. Again, what I said like earlier, policy creates politics. That's a nice political science kind of catchphrase, but there's something to it. It's a long-term investment. You need to establish constituencies who are in support of it, and of course, people need to have an awareness of what it means to drive not safely. And we noticed this, for example, when our kids play road hockey on Waterloo streets. Drivers pass by they pass by, they're very supportive. They greet and say, hey, nice, but the speed that they're applying is not safe. So I think there's this learning, internalizing, cultivating element here, and that's again something where we need a carrot and unfortunately also a stick approach, otherwise it won't happen. And again, it's a long-term kind of thing. I would add one thing, it's not just about Zone 30. Given the time constraints, I would think much more broadly about play streets, for example, which is also very important in European cities. Low traffic neighborhoods, so really creating space that is safe. That is something that should, in my opinion, be rolled out gradually.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That appears to be all the questions. Thank you very much. Oh, Councillor Michaud, you're okay. Next we have Matthew Bells. Welcome, Mr. Bells. Please go ahead.
Hello, I'm Matthew Bells, and I'm speaking as a property owner of Ward 9. I'd like to thank the Community and Infrastructure Committee for allowing me to speak on the topic of street
Can you
safety.
please speak a little closer to your mics?
Oh, yes, is this
Thank
better?
you.
Okay. We are told that speed kills, but how much speed? At 30 kilometers per hour, the chances of survival are 80 to 90%. At 40, this drops to 30 to 60%. And at over 50, the chance of survival is pretty much zero. However, even at 30 kilometers per hour, note the risk of serious injury, that's the right graph, is nearly 50%. This includes requiring a wheelchair for life or permanent brain injury. At 40, the serious injury increases to 70%. And all of these numbers double if the person is hit by an SUV or pickup. I'd like to thank Kitchener Council for embracing the Vision Zero strategic plan. To quote the Kitchener document, "Traffic collisions are not accidents. They always have a cause, which means they can be prevented. Our Vision Zero strategy is our long-term plan to reduce serious injuries and death due to traffic collisions to zero in the community." Automatic speed enforcement is an effective tool. Guelph, for example, is successfully using it. While some may argue ASC is a money grab, let's compare it to policing. Covering less than 2% of the 122 schools in our region for just a couple of hours a day would cost over $500,000 a year. With such a low chance of getting caught, it's no wonder that fines must be very high. ASC, with complete coverage, could actually issue much lower fines and yet be much more effective. Driving the program costs down by providing online ticketing and payment would also be beneficial. Using automation is cheaper and more equitable than leaving enforcement up to humans. Just like we usually don't clear the farms anymore by hand, we use tractors. There's no reason to use valuable and expensive resources and services to perform such a predictable task of speed patrol. One way to get the community behind safety enforcement is to spend 100% of the proceeds of fines to street engineering improvements and beautification. This includes narrowing lanes to less than 2.7 meters, adding trees, creating continuous sidewalks and raised crossings, chicanes, and bollards, all within the school streets. We have to remember that ASE is but one tool in the toolbox. What are the alternatives? Narrowing lanes is very effective. However, one planner recently commented that reducing widths to 3.5 meters had almost no effect on the speed. This is because these widths were designed for essentially 50 to 60 kilometer per hour roads. If we reduce the lanes, again, to 2.5 to 2.7 meters, there would be quite a noticeable effect. This width is similar to the gap between the flex signs installed for the traffic calming already. Adding chicanes and bollards would help, and it ensures drivers remain attentive. Worst case, the vehicle runs into a barrier as opposed to running over a child. The laws of physics are far more effective than the laws passed by any government. And the last thing I figured I would mention is school streets. I believe Kitchener should strive to create at least a few school streets, say in 1/3 of our 122 region schools. So what is a school street? It is one that is essentially open to only pedestrian and cycle traffic for the hour at least before and after school. And yes, okay, emergency buses and vehicles would be allowed, and handicapped vehicles as well. But it essentially means no cars and no buses. Ideally, this would eventually be for every school, but the city has a lot of poorly placed schools on arterial roads. Kitchener should not be left behind. Markham, Mississauga, Kingston, Toronto, etc. are implementing school streets. These are important to both the safety and independence of children. In conclusion, automatic speed enforcement is an effective tool for increasing safety, and it would help fund street improvements, ensuring a positive experience in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baus. We do have some council questions. Councillor Michaud.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation. I have a question regarding the school streets. Who would financially support that? Like, how does that get done, in what street? What new city did you say it's happening in? Sorry.
So often there's already crossing guards deployed in those areas, and if there are, for example, temporary pylons or whatever, the crossing guards before their shift would simply come out and place them on the street. If you're talking about engineering improvements, I'm suggesting that ASC funds or revenues could be used to offset some of those costs. Otherwise, regular infrastructure funding or the Vision Zero targeted funding could be used.
And what city did you say these are already in? I think you mentioned.
Yes, there's quite a few. Markham, Mississauga, Kingston, Toronto, Montreal, etc.
Okay, thank you.
That appears to be all the questions. Thank you so much for your presentation. Next, we have Leslie Maxwell and Katha Broszek, please.
Good afternoon. I think, can you hear us both? And thank you.
Can you move the mics a little closer to you?
Sure.
Thank you. Maybe
They're
we
both
can,
active?
Is it the right height for you right now? Because we can move it up or down. Are you
I think
good?
it's fine.
Okay, great. Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, and to the Chamber, thank you for having us here to speak today. I'm Leslie, and most of you know that I work with Student Transportation Services of Waterloo Region, and I'm here today with Katha Broschek, who is our Sidewalk Smarts lead instructor. We want to speak in support of the Vision Zero plan. Children are not, I get to have the power again, don't I? Children are not often afforded the right to go places on their own in our communities, but they should be. Studies show that independent mobility is critical to children's development and well-being in myriad ways. Yet families hesitate to allow children the freedom to learn on our streets, and I think I know why. Because it's just like when I try to use Duolingo. I'm too cheap to pay for the app, so they only give me 5 free mistakes. That means I learn until I make 4 mistakes, and then I get really nervous and I stop. I'm confident until I've used those 4. Duolingo knows that learning actually relies on mistakes, but on our streets, a single mistake can cost a child his life. The stakes are simply too high for families to let children practice. The Vision Zero plan is helping to provide children the freedom to make collision-free mistakes, and I think that's integral to where we're headed. Improved infrastructure and wraparound road safety education will create an environment where families will feel comfortable allowing their children to practice, and that practice will make them better road users all around, while also providing all of the benefits that you see on this slide. I hope you can see it. SDSWR is working on 3 Vision Zero educational supports in agreement with City of Kitchener staff. In 2023-24, our focus has been on the first, and that is delivering Sidewalk Smarts pedestrian education to 5 additional Kitchener schools. We've also made some progress on skill sheets, sharing expectations for parent drivers, and pedestrian skill sheets for children, and our community road model program that asks both drivers and active travelers to pledge their commitment to road safety. Katha's going to tell you a little bit about our Sidewalk Smarts program.
Thanks for having me. So Sidewalk Smart is a program for grade 3s and 4s, and the main idea is to foster active transportation as a default mode early on, as you can see in the principles. The program consists of 2 parts: the in-class session, where we talk with the students about benefits of walking, how to safely navigate traffic, or that kind of stuff, and what we as pedestrians should do to be safe. We teach them 4 things. It's stop, look, listen, and think, and they really cheer it in your face at the end. The second part, we take the students out on walks during their neighborhood on pre-selected routes, and we stop at different points like intersections, roundabouts, like the tricky kind of things, even driveways. And we talk about what should we do, what can we do. And the students get to practice what we learned in the in-class session in real life.
These numbers are in your report. In 2024, we served 901 City of Kitchener students in 49 classes. 7 different schools will be targeted in the 2025 season, and we have a plan of repeating each school every other year to ensure no student is missed in those schools.
And as you can see in the quotes, you could really see the confidence of the children growing. Like at the beginning, they often ask to hold your hand, and by the end, they walk up to the curbside and they do that, stop, look, listen, think. Like you could really feel they felt safer knowing what to do and in what way to do it. And teachers and the parent volunteers really appreciated that.
We wanted to share some of the instructor and classroom teacher observations with you. We got some of those comments when we surveyed, that you saw on the last slide, when we surveyed participating teachers. Other things they told us: 100% of the respondents found the in-class material to be effective, 100% found the curbside session to be valuable, and 100% said that they would participate again. There was no question that teachers saw the impact this program had on students, but there are mixed feelings about delivering it themselves without training. Sidewalk Smarts is filling a very important gap here. Our goal with these educational interventions is to reduce the number of mistakes our children make, while your team adapts the roads and provides further wraparound education, so that any mistakes they do make won't cost them their lives. Together, we know we can build an environment where families consistently and confidently allow their children to practice what they need to know to gain their independent mobility. And this is in large part thanks to each one of you for upholding the Vision Zero plan. Thank you.
Thank you both. We do have lots of questions from Council. Councillor Singh.
Yeah, it's I think more specific to Leslie. I like the whole sidewalk smarts idea. I think that's fantastic. And Leslie, as a student transportation planner, what type of coordination do you do with school boards to encourage them to, leverage and partner up with the cities, specifically City of Kitchener, where we are asphalting and winter maintaining our trails network, which provides a very effective connection point to schools, and especially, limiting the number of cars that are on the road during the morning where parents have to drop their kids off.
Thanks for that question, Councillor Singh. We have actually met out on the street with City of Kitchener staff and the planning division from each of the boards at different locations to take a look at those trails and to see where we can better coordinate services and where and when boards can come forth to pave more of their trail systems that are on the property, to ensure that any families with wheels, strollers, mobility devices can actually access the school as well. So that's a slow process, but the school boards have been making some good steps. And of course, the City of Kitchener's studies have shown that when those paths are both paved so that they can be plowed, and then they are winter maintained, that the rates of active transportation go up. This creates a space where families do feel like that's the way we get to school. So I really appreciate that question.
It absolutely does, and we have anecdotal data now to show support that, and that's why we're aggressively building it within our base budget to do more of these trails across the city. I'm kind of persisting in this question a little bit, and I hope the committee will understand. For Vision Zero, I think it's as important for us utilizing alternate transportation modes, as well as, of course, how do we manage speeding on our road networks as well. So where there was a pilot for winter maintaining and asphalting trails in Ward 6 specifically, there again are two schools where trails connect many neighborhoods, and then the trail ends at the edge of the school property, and there's a fair distance. There is a trail that connects to the school door, but again, the school board is unwilling to take that additional step on. What more do you think we could do to encourage and work with the school boards?
I'd like to know more information about that specific incident or case, so I'm happy to work with your staff and to make that connection for the board staff. I understand, though, from their perspective, they don't get extra funding for these things, so they're finding it. It might be move a lot slower than your engine can, but I am absolutely in support and would be happy to help make those things happen wherever I can,
okay,
even by collecting data to show what's happening in their schools right now, and to help convince them that those efforts will be
We would,
valuable.
in Ward 6 would love that extra help. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. Councillor Michaud.
Thank you. I don't have any questions. I just want to thank you both for all the hard work that you do. I had the pleasure of attending a couple of walk to school days with Brigadoon, and the experience that the kids get by doing that. It's shocking how many kids don't walk to school anymore. And you're kind of working with the city staff with our Vision Zero and other parties and just kind of bringing that back. So I really appreciate all the work you're doing.
Thank you very much. And thanks for being there on one of the coldest days of the year last year.
Thanks, Councillor Michaud. Councillor Stretch.
Yes, thank you. I also am a fan of your work. I noticed some of the schools that you mentioned. Why were those schools chosen to be schools that you went in to educate?
Thank you for that question. We gained collision data and some other safety data from your team at the City of Kitchener to help us shortlist some schools. But these kind of interventions require two things. They require us we want to reach out to those schools that are most in need, but we also need the school to be ready to take it on, because internally it does take some volunteer effort. We actually use volunteers on the curbside walks, so the families have to be ready to come forward, and we also need to make sure that the teaching staff is on board. So in those schools that are ready, usually those are our school travel planning schools where we're already working on other interventions, and we've done some traffic management around the school. They're more ready. So both of those things kind of come into play when we're evaluating and bringing those schools forward.
Okay, thank you. How can the city, or how can we help expand this network? I mean, 7 is great, but also only 7. So, I'm wondering, I'm noticing there's no downtown schools.
Yet.
I'm noticing, hearing you say you need the volunteer networks, but, in some schools where parent volunteers might not readily be there might be some of the schools that need that extra intervention and teaching, education. Yeah.
Thank you again for that question. We are looking at ways to scale it. Like, there are little tweaks. We don't want to compromise on the ratio of teaching. And Katha can speak more closely to that because she's been in the classroom. But we can't take away the curbside session. We can't take away the in-class work. To make this easier to deploy. So we would need a larger team with more weeks, and that all requires money. So right now I think we're thinking it's about $1,200 to $1,500 per school to deploy in a school, and that costs a lot when you scale to 100 schools, right? So we're slowly. Plus, we need to build our team and our infrastructure in order to make sure that we're ready to fully support every interpretation, every intervention of ours. So yeah, lots of manpower. And what's funny is that when we brought together the adults, Katha is a well-practiced pedestrian, but she can speak to teaching the group of instructors. They didn't know the rules of the road. So we need to develop a stronger band of instructors as well. We need more depth in that field before we could expand.
Yeah, I would hate people to lose out on some education, because it is so important, especially sending your kids off to school. I know I am a parent who is nervous about having them walk and cross Frederick Street, but want to be able to afford my children that resource or luxury really to walk to school. But thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stretch. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you, and I share the sentiment. Thank you for the work that you do. I just wondered if you could speak to the sidewalks that no longer have boulevards. So as road work is done, we often take out those boulevards and we have the sidewalk right up against the road. And I just wondered if this created challenges at your end, when you're trying to help the students along and
It really depends on the context, to be honest. With the Vision Zero plan, most of those reconstructions mean that there's a bike lane beside the sidewalk. So if there's no boulevard but a bike lane, you still get a buffer between the cars traveling at 50 or 60 kilometers per hour and the kids on the sidewalk. If removing that boulevard also means a wider sidewalk, then there might be more room for the quicker traffic to get past them, so they're not jumping onto the street. It could mean that the lane has been narrowed, and therefore the traffic is moving slower. So it really depends on the context. I don't love putting kids on a curb-faced sidewalk against 60 or 70 kilometer per hour vehicles, obviously. And I think we're moving again away from that with Vision Zero.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. Thank you for coming in. It's been my experience, and I just piggybacking on a little what Councillor Singh said about the pilot in his ward, where the city did our part to make sure the trail were cleared, but the school didn't. And, for me, that's something where, we've done our part. If we're trying to do this, we need to work together. And it's also been my experience that, the city has done our part in getting kids safely to school. Like, for example, Chicopee Hill School, we provide 5 crossing guards there. But once they get on the school property, to be honest, I don't see the same measure of effort and cost. We hear, well, we can't staff that. We don't have the cost. Well, we have to cover our costs to do this. So how can we, as the city, work together with the school boards to actually make it safe and get more kids walking to school?
Really, through school travel planning, I think, is the answer, because we do have the school board, the school principals at that table ready to talk. And at Chicopee Hills, it's been an ongoing effort, and the school board has come out and done a lot of reparations on their property. And they did as many as they could during the building phase, because that's when they have money to make those improvements. And then once the building phase is over, they don't have a pot to go into. So we need to find more creative ways to address the problems on the street, or on the school property. But we have made some real headway there. And at Chicopee Hills, it's really, I know there's, from superficially looking from the outside in, it might look like there's lots of conflict there. We have hundreds of kids walking to Chicopee Hills, as you see, probably regularly. And that comes out of a story where before that school was built, families said that they would never let their kids cross Fairway Road or Lackner Boulevard. So I think we've done a lot of really good stuff there. We've increased the number of bike racks there because so many kids are biking to school. We've changed the bus pickup in order to moderate traffic on the property so that kids are not crossing the traffic on the property. And I'm blanking right now, but they do all the education and encouragement pieces. They've built their traffic plan into their handbook. We could go on, but you and I can talk about that again. I think we have more work. I'm not saying it's done, but I think we've done a lot there.
I just agree that there needs to be more concerted working together, because for us to clear a trail and them not to, what's the use? Seriously. So
yeah,
anyway,
we've made some headway there, but not enough. We'll get there.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Schneider. Perhaps we need to sign up to be a delegate.
At the board.
And I wanted to thank you both as well. Leslie, as you know, we've worked together for years. I was first elected to school board in 2010, and I've been attending, Walk Your Kids to School for years and years. I wanted to ask you about that as well. And it's wonderful to have as a goal. It's just, you know what? How do we grow that program? It seems to be like it's a special event, and it's like it's one and done. How do we help to, obviously through a number of these initiatives, but really to continue with that program, because I see it as a chicken and egg issue in that, sorry, I haven't let you answer the question yet, but that I'm happy to see that you're doing these parent and child skill sheets. That's amazing. Part of the issue is that parents don't feel safe walking or having their kids walk to school, so they drive them to school, which exacerbates the problem then for people feeling safe about walking their kids to school. I'll let you expand on that. Thanks.
Thank you. I think your staff is doing a really great job of getting these educational pieces out to the broader community, so that maybe our streets won't look so intimidating, and maybe parents will start to feel more comfortable allowing their kids to walk. Those encouragement days are fantastic for those people who've never tried walking or biking to school. It really encourages them because they know a lot of people will be on the streets with them. But you're right, it can't stop there. And in fact, in one of your schools just this year, we worked with St. Mark. They incorporated a Walking Wednesday program, so it was every week. And we did a pre-project data collection in the fall that said that about 90 kids were walking to school per day. And after we implemented this Walking Wednesday, well, actually, it wasn't even, pardon me, we started out calling it Walking Wednesday, but they decided they wanted to do it every day. And they had some incentives for the kids. They found some tickets, some sports tickets and stuff for a giveaway. And so the kids had to bring their little cards into the school, to the teacher every day to have them signed off to say, hey, I walked, and you qualify if you walk a distance. So even if a parent feels like they have to drive, as long as they keep the traffic away and walk more, we were happy to support that. And if they walk to their school buses, because that's also a problem. We have people driving to their school bus stops. So we wanted to encourage everybody to move the needle a little bit. And then at the end of this program, we found that 166 kids turned in their full card that they'd walked every day. So we're making some progress. Like if we go from 90 kids walking to school to 166 taking part in a program like this, we find that a glowing success. So, and I think, it doesn't stop there. With school travel planning, we try to address all 5 E's. We work with partners on the engineering pieces and on enforcement, and then we do the education encouragement. We do some evaluation to make sure what we're doing is working, but it takes all of those forces in order to have a sustained change. And it's not until our city streets start to look a little different that we can ease off. We have to keep working. And I think education will be forever, right? We always want our kids to learn these valuable lessons that CAT is bringing to them, and that the city is working on as well. So I think that never ends, really.
Yeah, and thank you so much. I didn't want to make it sound like it was hopeless, but I will also say that I live behind a school. And so I watch people drop children off, and their kids have walked kind of safely up onto the sidewalk, heading towards the school, and they take off so quickly because now they're rushing off to work, and other kids then are in. It truly is something that we need to be working on the education of parents with too, so however we can be helping with that, I think is really important, and it truly is all these different pieces that we've been talking about. And York, you had mentioned, the carrot and stick approach, and at some point, I think that's what we need to be looking at as well. Thank you so much for your presentation. That's all the questions from council. Thank you.
Our pleasure.
And council, if you want to key in for questions to staff. Sorry? Oh, and I'm sorry, do we have another delegate? We do, I apologize. And Rita Rahman, please. I'm so sorry. Welcome, Ms. Rahman.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Chamber, for the opportunity to speak to you today. I'm Rita Rahman. I'm a resident of Ward 4, and I'm also a member of the Active Transportation and Trails Advisory Committee here in the City of Kitchener. On behalf of the Active Transportation Trails Advisory Committee, I would like to read our...
Excuse me, can you speak a little closer into your mics, please? There
Absolutely. Is this better?
Thank you.
On behalf of the Active Transportation and Trails Committee, I would like to read our statement on the City Council decision to change the school zone speed limits and automated speed enforcement. As a city, we are striving to be a place of joy, of safety, of equity for all our citizens. This statement reminds Council of its commitments to these principles through the strategic plan, highlights some data and research regarding the Active Transportation and Trails Advisory Committee concerns, gives details of the discussion we're referring to, and finally, gives recommendations supported by research and engineering best practices. Children, along with seniors and the disabled, are the most vulnerable road users. A consistent speed limit of 30 kilometers per hour is evidently a key condition for road safety, as it significantly enhances drivers' attention, reaction time, and ultimately reduces the risk of severe and fatal injuries caused by motor vehicle collisions. Moreover, perceived and objective road safety is a critical factor for families to permit their children to commute independently by using active modes of transportation such as walking, rolling, or cycling. It is therefore the responsibility of City Council to enact policies that will protect children and all vulnerable road users within and outside of school zones and before, during, and after school hours, considering that schools are multifunctional community hubs that operate throughout days and evenings and throughout the entire year, including holidays, after-school activities, children's playgrounds, community activities such as outdoor sports like baseball diamonds, soccer fields, movie nights, math nights, etc. A speed limit of 30 kilometers per hour is effective and has minimal effect on vehicle travel time. Council's decision weakens the existing policy framework and reduces safety and harmonization. It also contradicts directly or indirectly goals and commitments not only entailed in the Vision Zero strategy, but also in the Pedestrian Charter, the Climate Emergency Declaration, and the strategic plan recently passed by Council. The Active Transportation and Trails Committee has now had an opportunity to review Council's decision of December 11, 2023, to remove automated speed enforcement from roads in school zones with a posted kilometer or speed limit of 30 kilometers per hour, to increase the speed limits on roads with fixed ASE from 30 kilometers per hour to 40 kilometers per hour, allowed ASE only for school zone roads with a posted limit of 40 kilometers per hour or higher, and ascertain flexible instead of static ASE enforcement in school zones. This decision and the debate preceding it raises serious concerns about the commitment to implement a robust Vision Zero strategy. We therefore encourage City Council to follow the example of many other great cities around the world and look at the problem through the lens of children rather than the lens of drivers behind the windshields of motor vehicles. We urge you to recognize the multiple benefits for all road users, including the most vulnerable, of enforced safe speed limits to create safer, equitable, and more sustainable local transportation infrastructure and a more livable city. To that end, we advise councilors to reinstate the consistent speed limits of 30 kilometers per hour in all school zones in the jurisdiction of the City of Kitchener and to work with the Region of Waterloo to implement automated speed enforcement in all school zones, to align the city's transportation policy with existing research, best practices, and the recommendations of key stakeholders like the Student Transportation Services of Waterloo Region and the Canadian Association of Road Safety Professionals and the World Health Organization, and to work collaboratively with all other jurisdictions in the region to establish a more harmonized approach that prioritizes road safety for all users, all abilities, of all ages. Respectfully submitted, the Active Transportation Trails Advisory Committee. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation. We do have some questions from Council. Go ahead, Councillor Michaud.
Thank you. I want to thank you for your presentation and all your work on the committee. So just so I'm clear with what you said, bringing it back to 30 kilometers across the city, hopefully the region someday, with all the schools, is that like 365 days of the year, including summer, it's always that speed?
Thank you for your question. So yes, it would ideally be that speed consistently, because even outside of school hours, outside of school months, schools are used during the summer for summer camps, for other school activities, for before and after school care, for activities like math nights, movie nights. The sports fields are in use constantly. Other users in the community will also rent that space occasionally to hold classes and the like. And so it's important that we protect those folks in being able to access that community hub 24/7, 365 days a year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Michaud. That appears to be all the questions. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, Council. That is all of the delegations, and we'll move on to questions of staff. If you want to key in. Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Michaud.
I don't have any questions. If no one else has questions, I just have comments. So I thought this was comment. I'm sorry. These are questions?
Sorry, if you want to key back in then. Councillor Chapman?
Yeah, no, I just, it's been brought up a couple times today and on previous occasions, the desire to have the speed limits reduced to 30 across the board. Can you just speak to that, please?
Through you, Chair, to the councillor. Within the City of Kitchener, on City of Kitchener roads and streets, any local minor collector or major collector school zone is 30 kilometers an hour static. That's 24 hours a day, 365 days per year. If a school zone on a City of Kitchener street or road is equipped with automated speed enforcement, the speed limit is increased to 40 kilometers per hour static, 365, 24 hours a day. And that's based on robust discussion here at Council, where Council made an informed decision back in December about the direction to go. And we are aligned with other provincial municipalities as well as the region of Waterloo. And we would also offer that to make real change in terms of driver behavior, a lot of that is going to come from re-engineering or completing hotspot improvements in these areas or automated speed enforcement.
And what about the speed limit outside of the school zones?
Through you, Chair, so within our neighborhoods, the speed limits are 40 kilometers an hour. That excludes arterial roads and does not include regional roads. But all of our neighborhoods are 40 kilometers an hour, and that's static as well, 24 hours a day, 365 a year.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Chapman. Councillor Michaud.
No, I just have comments.
Oh. My apologies. Councillor Stretch.
Yes, thank you. So we heard about some different initiatives like play streets and school streets. Is that something the city's ever explored?
Through the chair to the councillor, yes, we've had high-level discussions about that. We did operate a pilot program during COVID called Slow Streets, where streets were closed through traffic. There were mixed results from that pilot, albeit that was during a pandemic. We are aware of other municipalities that, from my understanding, are more in a pilot phase, like the City of Hamilton, that are testing out these types of treatments within school zones. So it's certainly something that staff can take away and investigate further and understand how it might apply here in the City of Kitchener.
Thank you, Councillor Stretch. Councillor Davey.
Thank you. Can you remind me what year it was that we reduced the speed limit on our side streets from 50 to 40?
Through you, Chair, that was approved by Council in 2021. And since that time, our roads and traffic team have been implementing the signage, and we completed the large majority of the city at the end of 2023. So it took about 2 years to get all of the signs implemented.
Okay, yeah, and I'm just looking at the chart on page 16 of our report then. So if I look back at 2018, it looks to me like the number of injuries and the fatalities were the same when it was 50 kilometers an hour as it was in 2022 when it was 40 kilometers an hour. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that's correct based on looking at the graph.
Thank you. And the three fatalities, so there were 0 fatalities from traffic collisions in 2018, 2019, 1 in 2020, 2 in 2021, and 0 in 2022. Of those 3, do we know if any of those were in school zones? Any of those 3 fatalities?
Through you, Chair, no, they were not in school zones.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. Councillor Michaud.
So in 2018, there were no the fatalities or the accidents are the same as now, but what's the increase in traffic since 2018? Can you speak to that at all in the city?
Through you, Chair, I wouldn't be able to give you a firm answer about how much our traffic has increased or decreased since that time. COVID had a significant impact on travel patterns, and we're just starting to get back to some normalized patterns, but I can't answer that question. Sorry.
That was my point. With COVID, people were at home and there wasn't as much traffic as there is today. I'm just going to surmise that I think that's a good possibility.
Thank you, Councillor Michaud. I don't see any other questions. Any comments? Oh, Councillor Michaud.
I'd like to thank staff for this report and all the hard work that you have done since we started in 2018 with this project. And I will be, honestly, didn't expect to see such great work that you've done over the course of years, and all the traffic calming that you've done in all the wards, and now how it's gone from like a low amount to a much higher amount. So people are starting to notice that we're trying to we're making our streets safer. And I think the seasonal traffic calming program that you started, I will say I felt it was a little slow starting, but I'm pretty excited that it's where it's at now. So with that, I'd like to, so I approve this report, and I'd like to make an amendment at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Councillor Michaud. Councillor Deneau.
Thank you, Ms. Chair, and again, thanks Aaron and Barry for bringing this report forward. I just want to make a comment, and it's a positive comment. You know, when I first was elected, our first meeting, I presented I don't know if I gave you the petition, but a gentleman who was in Ward 3 who no longer resides in Ward 3, unfortunately, over the course of years had a petition to have the PXO at Kingsway and Greenfield. And that was important to him, and so I just want to thank you for listening. Obviously, you're following the data, but you know, he no longer lives in my ward, but I plan on letting him know the day that that is operational, that he can push the first button. I'm serious, because he worked hard over the course of years just to get signatures to bring that to fruition, because of the safety element with, you know, in around the Kingsway area of seniors and people without access to cars. And so, I want to thank you for bringing this to fruition, and you know, it's going to make definitely that area a lot safer. So thanks again.
Thank you, Councillor Deneau. Councillor Davey.
Yes, thank you. Question, if I can, to staff with respect to the amendment. First, just want to confirm the staff, you're aware of this beforehand? Okay, thank you. I like it. I just want to make sure I'm clear on what I'm voting on. So historically, our traffic calming program would look at a couple of streets or whatever per year and exclusively on those streets and spend a significant amount of money. And this motion would be to essentially maybe get rid of that and focus entirely on hotspot improvements, and that's what you're going to be looking at?
Through you, Chair, that's correct. So we are currently running the formal traffic calming program and the hotspot improvement program as two separate initiatives. However, they're both working to achieve the same thing. The primary difference is that the hotspot program is it's simply more efficient and proactive and data-driven. The formal traffic calming program requires a resident to reach out to us to request their street to be on a list that then gets evaluated each year. And we're only doing one of those per year now because council allocated funding from two of those to the hotspot program. So there is an equity piece there, whereas the hotspot improvement program, we just inherently look at every single street and every single intersection every year, and through that data-driven process, identify the highest priority locations to council. The only other thing I would mention is that in terms of the budget, we hold about $70,000 per year for a formal traffic calming project. We don't typically require that full amount, but we need to carry that healthy budget because we don't know which street we're going to formally traffic calm. And while the funding we do not use gets carried over into the next year where it can be used for hotspot improvements, we have to wait that time to put that money to work versus planning that all as one holistic budget through the hotspot program every single year.
Okay, excellent. Can I have a brief comment as well? Or?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so this sounds great. Happy to support. Councilor Michaud, it sounds like a great amendment. As a matter of fact, I thought there was some resistance to going that route through the budget process, but I'm 100% in support of this. And just by way of brief comment, I just want to say as well, I do agree our traffic staff has done a tremendous job trying to reduce the incidence of injury and fatality on our roads, and it's a difficult thing for council to try and find that balance, but I think we've actually found that balance, and again, I'm happy to support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to start off with saying good job, Councillor Michaud. I think this is exactly the right direction. I remember a time where I think we had increased it, and there was a point in time we had 4 formal, and then obviously now that we're back to 1, it goes to show that there is a better way for us to mitigate on speeding issues in our neighborhoods. And a part of that mitigation, I think, is the informal speed calming measures too, that is within the control of members of council to direct and work with the transportation team to address issues. Because again, when we had the formal speed calming, where the list was some 200 streets and we're doing just a couple a year, it would take forever to get to areas that obviously there was angst of parents of speeding on their streets, and now we can easily put those median deflectors. And now I'm glad we're looking at putting 3 in a row, which really does reduce speeding. So it just goes to show that there can be a conjunction of methods of hotspot improvements, the softer measures, speed calming measures directed through members of council, and working with the public. If ever there was a department that listens, it's the transportation department. I say that every department, by the way. So. No, honestly, I think it's recognition to our staff that have been continually pushing the needle. You know, we didn't make drastic changes all of a sudden, that there was a huge pushback by the public. We have continually improved road safety over the last 10 years that I've been very observant on the changes that we've made. And I think reducing the speed limit in our neighborhoods from 50 to 40, that in itself has brought a lot of safety. Speeding limits of 30 kilometers an hour in our school zones, that in itself has improved road safety. And now we're having speed camera enforcement, ensuring that at the very least no one's driving beyond the 40 kilometers an hour. That in itself gives the surety as well. So we are continually improving it. I don't think there's a way that we can snap our finger and make it perfect. But the fact that our transportation staff are continually being very innovative, we are getting to that endeavor of Vision Zero. So thank you to staff for all that you're doing.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. I think I would like to, congratulate staff on the tremendous work that they do. I mean, it's one of the few meetings that we have every year that I actually really look forward to, and because I feel like it makes a difference in our respective wards. And this motion, this amendment, I fully support. I've never really been a big fan of the formal traffic calming process. I felt that it was more divisive. You would get like 50% of the residents not happy, and the 50% of the residents were happy. So I am so glad to see that gone. Will be gone after this, and I feel that this is a much better tool and more innovative tool, and I look forward to seeing the results when this is approved.
Thank you, Councillor Ioannidis. And that appears, Councillor Michaud?
I'm not sure where I could put this in. I'm looking to possibly bring another motion forward to instate that all school zones are 30 kilometers an hour.
So Councillor Michaud will deal with this one first. Councillor Davey?
Yeah, sorry, if I'm understanding the potential amendment correctly, that would require a notice of reconsideration.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Thank you, Councillor Davey. I appreciate that. I'm going to make a few comments as well, and I just wanted to thank staff too. This is really great. The commercials are wonderful, like really good job, and great job to our comms team on those as well. They're really awesome. It's I must say I probably share the attitude of the woman in the car next to someone speeding, and you give the little smirk to the guy because you're like. Yeah, you didn't get very far ahead in that 20 seconds that you revved your engine, and I appreciate your just comment or figures on saying that when you drive slower, that's going to help us with our greenhouse gas emissions. So thank you. That's a really important thing as well. And I always think that whenever somebody speeds up ahead of me and then slams their brakes on, wow, that you just wasted $1 there, or whatever it happened to be, but also the contribution to our greenhouse gases. So I agree with what other councillors have said. Your whole entire team is so receptive to listening to concerns from residents and the concerns that council brings forward. I really appreciate the education that you provide to our residents, also the education that you provide to us as well. Sometimes when I hear something and I go, oh yeah, that's something we need to move on, and then you help us take a step back and look at how are we going to study this and what is the best path forward. I really appreciate your measured approach. I don't always appreciate it, but I really appreciate it at the same time. So just be honest about that. A big difference that I've noticed as I drive around the city as well and walk around the city is how well the PXOs with the raised ones are doing. I mean, people truly slow down and are letting people cross there. And I think that the combination of them raised with the lights has made a huge difference. So I just want to thank you again for the work that you've put into that, your consideration that you use data-based technology to make the decision about where those go, but also with the input of the community. So thank you so much. Okay, we'll now move on to consideration of Councillor Michaud's amendment. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Michaud? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think all of council has kind of spoken to it, and I suspect we're all going to approve this. Again, I said that when we started the formal traffic calming, it was slow to start, and it seemed like things were going in a snail's pace, and we're really moving the needle as far as safety concerns for our citizens. So,
thank you. Okay, so we'll vote on the amendment first. So, Councillor Michaud, you've moved it. Do we need a seconder? Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carried unanimously. And we'll move on to the main motion then. Councillor Michaud, did you already move the main motion? Yes. Okay. And seconder, Councillor, we don't need that. All those in favor? And that passed unanimously. Thank you. Okay, we'll now move on to the Integrated Sanitary Master Plan final report. And Nick Golin, there you are. Thank you. We'll look forward to your presentation. Please go ahead when you're ready.
My pleasure to present the key findings and recommendations of Kitchener's first Integrated Sanitary Master Plan. The Integrated Sanitary Master Plan aims to develop a sanitary strategy to guide the city's future servicing needs. The plan developed and evaluated alternative solutions and recommended addressing identified deficiencies while considering planned growth across the city. It also identified and prioritized filling in some significant data gaps that were uncovered during the study process. Consultation is a mandatory component of the environmental assessment process. We have fulfilled all the requirements stipulated for this project by engaging with the community at large through 2 virtual open houses using the Engage platform, and we've also provided additional details to Indigenous rights holders with whom we continue to meet to discuss various sanitary and stormwater utility initiatives several times throughout the year. Generally, the sanitary system is well positioned for growth, with a handful of constraint areas that must be monitored and evaluated depending on the type of proposed development within that area. Majority of projects identified through the master plan are condition related. These standalone sanitary projects, of which there are approximately 80, are not currently captured in any forecasted full road reconstruction projects. Significant data gaps exist in the sanitary network, including no condition information for 75% of the trunk sewers larger than 600 millimeters. Also currently missing is enhanced rainfall and flow monitoring data collection, which is needed for refined hydraulic analysis in the computer model. Inflow and infiltration results from clean water entering the sanitary system through defective pipes, maintenance holes, and other surface water connections such as roof downspouts, as seen in picture 2. Data collected through the other monitoring programs, modeling, and activities such as smoke and dye testing will inform an I&I mitigation strategy. Projected climate change increases the risk of decreased capacity for growth, faster infrastructure deterioration, and increased risk of flooding. This will be monitored as it evolves. And lastly, hydrogen sulfide has been a significant issue in Kitchener's sanitary sewers. It's a form of colorless sewer gas, and it corrodes concrete sewer pipes, which led to the collapse of the Ottawa Street trunk sewer in 2022. There is no slide for alternative 1, which is a standard do-nothing alternative in all EAs. Essentially, the existing sanitary sewer system can accommodate growth for the next 30 years as long as we keep monitoring that growth and adapting the system to accommodate any deviations in planned growth, with some recommended improvements identified under Alternative 3. The plan identifies 2 types of infrastructure projects, capacity-based and condition-based. Most of our issues are condition-based. Any concerns regarding trunk sewers, pumping stations, and growth over the 30-year forecast will be partially addressed through these alternatives and partially addressed through further data collection and capital planning refinements over the next 5 to 10 years. The highest risk areas of the sanitary network are where we lack information. Alternative 4 solutions are a broad collection of data-focused programs. The programs aim to reduce flows in the sanitary sewer system and improve the city's understanding of its state. We recognize that this data acquisition work needs to be completed before any significant decisions on capital funding are made, which is why staff has not recommended adjusting rates or requesting any additional budget at this time. Completing the environmental study report marks the first step in implementing the recommendations of the sanitary master plan. Staff recommend that Council approve the municipal class environmental assessment and direct staff to file the report for the mandatory 30-day review period. Community engagement will continue to be an important component of data collection, design, and construction projects carried out after completing the master plan. The projects and programs identified for the next 5 years are largely high-priority infrastructure, rehabilitation, and data collection work. The data collected will likely identify new projects that will need to be planned and budgeted for in future years. Implementation details and priorities will be updated annually and aligned with funding availability during the budget process. As the Integrated Sanitary Master Plan was being finalized concurrently with the 2023 Water Infrastructure Program Review, sufficient funding was already allocated to address the most urgent short-term priorities. The Master Plan has identified an additional $75 million of capital investment required by 2051, beyond what has already been accounted for in the WIP review. However, that figure does not account for any new issues that are likely to be identified over the next 4 years of data collection. Any additional costs will be considered as part of future sanitary utility budgets.
Thank you, Mr. Golding. We do have some questions from Council. Go ahead, Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Mr. Golan, for the report. I appreciate it. Some good work here. I just have one question. Under the financial implications of the report, the Stantec estimate was $75 million, as you said in your presentation there, but it also says just before that, it's a Class D estimate of plus or minus 25 to 30%. So is it 75? Is that included in that? So is it like roughly 50 to 100, the challenge, or is that like a harder 75?
So it's 75 plus or minus that percentage. So it could be less than 75 or more than 75. That's sort of the median.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. Councillor Deneau.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. And you mentioned it in your slide. Are there any funding opportunities out there? I know I trust in you folks that you're always looking for those opportunities, but is there anything that you think of that's coming down the pipeline?
Yeah, through you, Chair, we're always keeping our ear to the ground for those opportunities. At this point, we're really aiming to have the master plan approved and posted and finalized, at which point we'll have a document that we could use as a justification for any funding application.
Okay, thank you. And this is just a weird question I'm going to ask. So do new developments put a strain on older infrastructure?
Through the Chair, they can. A lot of infrastructure in the city has been designed to accommodate future growth out to the developable limit. So what we see with some of the current, I'll say, applications is a lot more dense development proposals, and so it's quite important for us to do the flow monitoring and to do the hydraulic analysis and have the computer model set up to run those theoretical flows and to ensure there is sufficient system capacity for any of those proposals, and also to identify, when there isn't, what needs to be done in order to accommodate that additional growth.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Deneau. Councillor Ioannidis.
I don't have any questions. I'm prepared to move the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Nick, for the report. As the report outlines, as some of the work that's required also is to do with growth as well. So because it's mitigating growth that's happening in our within our city limits or even in urban areas, does DC funding help to offset the costs?
Through the chair, theoretically it will. We'll have to wait and see how the next development charge background study evolves and what the regulations are in place at that time. We are working closely with the planning division on the current iteration of the official plan update. So we will be looking at a few different growth scenarios hand in hand with the development of the new official plan for the City of Kitchener, just to identify where potential funding would be required to accommodate new growth and further development. So we'll keep an eye on that as that evolves.
Okay, so that's a really important answer, especially working on the previous question and answer from Councillor Deneau, theoretically assuming that it is feasible. So when we have a new construction where it's more denser, in a smaller area where there may be 3 or 4 homes and there's 300 units, instead that's being built, all that extra DC revenue in our built-up areas is going towards replacing some of that infrastructure as well.
Through the chair, potentially. It needs to be a consideration in order to facilitate that growth to take place.
Okay. Realizing that the potential exists, now let's assume a different scenario, that we're development averse, we don't want to see a lot of development happening in our urban areas or our built-up neighborhoods. Would those pipes still continue to deteriorate? Because the question was, does development impact on our infrastructure? Now, the counter thing is, would that infrastructure still continue to deteriorate and need to be replaced irrespective of future development?
Yes, through the chair again, it would continue to deteriorate. The rate may not be as high, it may not deteriorate as quickly, and depending on the type of effluent or discharge from the new development, we may not have as many harmful chemicals or whatever the case may be. However, all of our infrastructure will deteriorate regardless of any development or not, and there is a certain life cycle after which the risk becomes unbearable, I would say, to not replace or rehabilitate components of the network.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. Councillor Stretch.
Thank you. I did a tour last week with Boo and learned a lot. One of the key learnings I promised to share, flushable wipes are not flushable. In your presentation, you talked about a public education piece needing before moving forward. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, through the chair. It's still to be determined exactly what that public education, what form it will take and what shape it will take. However, it is on our radar. It is something that we do believe is important to get the word out there about the hidden underground critical infrastructure that makes your house and business run. So we will be working on developing a public education campaign around different topics to be determined, but it is something that we feel is important.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Stretch. Mr. Lamb, go ahead.
Yeah, and through the chair, thank you. I'll just add to Nick's comment as well. So currently we do quite a bit of education through a lot of the bill inserts that we send out. We have multiple videos that are contained on our City of Kitchener website. A lot of the education that we also look to do as well is through the youth. So every opportunity that we have to participate in, for instance, the region's groundwater festival, we typically set up a booth to try to explain how stormwater as well as the sanitary network works. We also have events that are set up through our Public Works Week that's coming up very shortly at the Kitchener Operations Facility, where we are also outreaching to schools to bring schools in so that they can learn about some of the public works, not just on the utility side, but all public works. Through that, we'll also have booths as well set up for the evening events where we're welcoming the general community in. So that is kind of partly what we're doing now, but we are developing more firm communications campaigns and engagement campaigns that we will be distributing more broadly over the next few years. Thank you.
It's a great answer. I always think we need to include the parents in that as well, as they're the ones that are buying those flushable wipes. So thank you. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you. I just wonder, you hear complaints from residents occasionally that, they just dug up our street, now they're digging it up again. So I just wondered if you could speak a bit to the coordination of the replacement or repairs to infrastructure, underground infrastructure, and how that is coordinated and carried out.
Yes, through the chair. That full road reconstructions are largely coordinated by the asset management team at the city, and they look at the condition of all the underground infrastructure to evaluate when it reaches that tipping point that justifies replacing all of it at once. So the sanitary sewer would be one component of that. The expectation would be that if a road is reconstructed, then it will have at least a 50 to 80 year life cycle before it needs to be addressed again. However, in order to lower the costs of infrastructure replacement, there are different components of the road that have longer or shorter life cycles. So the asphalt, for example, the road surface, does need to be addressed typically before the remainder of the underground utilities need to be. So there could be a case where the road has been freshly resurfaced and something has happened underground, so the utilities, the pipes underneath the road, they may be 50 or 60 years old. The road surface may only be a couple years old, and then we have a failure. So we try to avoid that as much as possible. We don't want to return to the same area shortly after a road resurfacing project is completed. However, there are instances where things beyond our control do occur, and we have to come back to address that on an emergency sort of basis.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that appears to be all the questions. Any comments? I don't see any. And Councillor Ioannidis has moved that. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you. Items, or we're just going to switch? Okay, thank you. And we'll adjourn.